JBN, we keep you informed. Female vendor killed in Mona Commons. The police are searching for gunmen in connection with the execution-style killing of a female vendor in Mona Commons, Papine St. Andrew on Sunday night. The deceased has been identified as Tamika Daly. Several persons were detained in Mona Commons Monday morning as the police searched for wanted men and illegal guns. It's reported that shortly after 8 o'clock, Daly was standing in the community when she was approached by men carrying assault rifles and guns. They shot Daly several times. Investigators are probing claims that Daly was accused of publicizing the names of men involved in a recent murder in the community. 4 men were arrested last week in connection with that killing. 24 arrested, 4 guns seized in St. Catherine. 24 people were on Tuesday, June 25 arrested, and the 3 firearms seized during police military operations in several St. Catherine communities. The police say the arrests are part of their ongoing anti-gang and murder reduction strategies. The operations began about 3 a.m. and included the communities of St. Jago Heights, Jones Avenue, Rivoli, Lauriston, Marchman Road, Bucktown, Top Banks, St. John's Road, and Homestead. According to the police, about 7 o'clock yesterday morning, an AK-47 rifle and 10 rounds of ammunition were seized on Jones Avenue in Spanish Town and 1 man taken into custody. 3 hours later, a high-point pistol and 7 rounds of ammunition were reportedly found in bushes off the Spanish Town bypass. However, no arrest was made. The police say they moved to the new nursery area where a Smith & Wesson firearm and 14 rounds of ammunition were seized and 1 man arrested. Have information that can help the police? Call Crime Stop at 311. A reward is offered for information that leads to the seizure of illegal weapons. Shante Skiles' family worries case will go cold. 2 months after 80-year-old Shante Skiles was raped and murdered and her body dumped in bushes on her way home from school in her rural St. Andrew community, relatives are afraid her attacker could escape justice as investigators are still trying to piece the clues together. A police source said that sleuths probing the incident that rocked the nation in mid-April are no closer to identifying the culprit than they were then. In addition, the 3 men who were detained for questioning in the aftermath have since been released because of a lack of evidence linking them to the murder. We are still, however, awaiting the forensic report from the lab, but it's a painstaking wait, which we have no control over, the source said. According to a police officer who did not wish to be named, the police are uncertain as to when they will get to see the results from the forensic report. The police have been making periodic contact with the lab, but we are unable to say when the results will be in our hands. In the meantime, we are still carrying out further investigations. The teams from the Major Investigation Branch and the St. Andrew North Police Division, said the source. Sky's paternal grandmother, Norma Hilton, said the family needs closure and they are hoping that the long wait for answers will end soon. Hilton said that she tried to get an update from detectives last week and they promised to call her. I am still waiting on that call, she said. The truth is that we hardly hear anything from the police, and that hurt us even more. We feel really bad because the killer could still be there in the community waiting to do that to another little girl again. Her mother lives elsewhere, but I feel her pain and I know she's not handling it well either, said Hilton. More than a decade after the murder of Fernanda Dean, an 11-year-old girl who went missing on her way home from school in St. Andrew in September 2008, and after whom the Child Recovery System has been named, her case still numbers among hundreds still unsolved. With more than 20 children murdered since the start of the year, Ananda's father, Richard Dean, believes that enough is not being done to bring child killers and abusers to justice. I believe that there is not enough effort from the police to solve these crimes. It's been 10 years now, and the person who killed my daughter is still a free man. On top of that, I hardly ever hear from the police anymore, he said. I feel for those families, Dean said as he reflected on the recent cases. It is a stark reminder of what I'm going through 10 years later since my daughter was taken from us. Laborer shot dead at home in Westmoreland. A laborer was shot and killed by unknown assailants at his home in Westmoreland early on Monday morning. The deceased man has been identified as 22-year-old Junior Campbell of Train Line Hartford, Westmoreland. Reports are that about 12:30 a.m., the police were summoned to Hartford after explosions were heard coming from Campbell's home. Upon their arrival, Campbell was found lying inside his house suffering from gunshot wounds to the upper section of his body. He was taken to the Savlamar Public General Hospital where he was pronounced dead. The Savlamar police, who are investigating, have not yet established a motive for the killing. Westmoreland is one of 3 western parishes that have been under a state of emergency since April 30. The other 2 parishes are St. James and Hanover. Shame child predators. Victim Support Exec urges Jamaicans to stop excusing sexual abuse by dirty old men. Jamaicans should stop glorifying and start naming and shaming dirty old men and cradle robbers, adult males who sexually prey on underage girls, Joy Crawford, Executive Director of E for Life, has urged. A panelist at the Female Development World Organization's second biannual Protect the Child Symposium at the University of Technology Pepin campus in St. Andrew recently, she decried the fact that underage high school girls glamorize their sexual relationships with far older men. Crawford revealed to the audience that she lost her virginity at 7 years old and that this somewhat triggered in her preference for older men. As a young girl, Crawford said she would scoff at the idea of dating a boy her age. It wasn't until she hit about age 40 that she began to acknowledge her unfortunate childhood experience as rape. That only happened because I was talking to a group of adult friends about growing up as a young girl and feeling very powerful that we don't date schoolboys. It was in that conversation that somebody said, "Do you realize that all the men that you have been involved with are abusers and predators?" "I've never named it as that before," Crawford said. She continued, "If a girl at age 13 or 14 feels good about being involved with a 30 or 40-year-old man, something has happened to her mind for her to not even realize, acknowledge, or name it. Then we're in trouble. Sexual abuse leaves a lifetime scar." Crawford stressed that the nation's children would not be safe from predators until perceptions are altered. She insisted that instead of glamorizing child abusers as boob sardons, they should be styled as pedophiles. Crawford said that as head of Eve for Life, an NGO providing support to survivors of sexual abuse and women and children living with or affected by HIV/AIDS, she has seen more than enough to cause concern. "I don't think we have ever prosecuted anybody in Jamaica and used the word pedophile. We need to change the narrative around this issue. There are a group of girls aged 14, 15, and 16 who I work with on a regular basis in the schools who talk about being involved in certain sexual behaviors, and it's almost like they received stripes. I think we have more of this than we have of those who end up being killed, unfortunately, or who we see on the news having committed suicide," she said. On Monday, retired cultural studies professor at the University of the West Indies, Caroline Cooper, said pedophiles are driven by an illness to exploit children, some of whom are given tokens to keep silent. "We have to get rid of these predators, but it's not easy because it's a question of supply and demand. As long as you have young girls and boys willing to be abused and used, you'll continue to have people using and abusing them," she said. Cooper pointed out that some mothers are still turning a blind eye to their children's sexual relationships with big men for economic gain. That may be why there is not that much of a conversation about that form of abuse. It is kept under wraps. Sometimes it is what the young girls think the man can give them. It's the same thing with some of the boys and the male homosexuals who prey on them. They may not have any basic interest in homosexuality, but if they can use their body to get whatever it is a man can give, many young men and females are willing to do it, she said. Jamaicans urged to reduce heat exposure. The Ministry of Health and Wellness is urging Jamaicans to take precautionary measures to reduce exposure to heat and limit the serious effects it can have on the body. The ministry says excessive heat stress is harmful to health and is potentially fatal. It notes that Jamaica, as other countries in the Caribbean, has a heat season that is typically between May and October each year. Heat-related illnesses include heat exhaustion, heat rash, heat muscle cramps, and the most severe illness, heat stroke. Heat stroke may be fatal, cautioned Dr. Nicole Dawkins-Wright, Director of Emergency Disaster Management and Special Services at the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Signs associated with a heat stroke include a very high body temperature, above 103 degrees Fahrenheit, hot and dry skin, a throbbing headache, and dizziness. Other signs include altered mental state or behavior, nausea, vomiting, flushed skin, rapid breathing, and a racing heartbeat. If any of these signs are noted, seek medical assistance immediately while finding ways to cool down the person, such as sponging with cold water, wrapping the person in a wet cold sheet, and fanning the person vigorously, advised Dawkins-Wright. Extreme heat stress may also trigger decompensation in some medical conditions such as diabetes and hypertension. Some persons are also at greater risk of being affected by heat. Among the most vulnerable are the elderly, as well as infants and children younger than 6 years of age, persons who are overweight, and those with pre-existing medical conditions. In order to prevent illness associated with the heat, members of the public are encouraged to hydrate with cool water, especially when it is hot and humid. Drink more fluids to limit or avoid sugar-sweetened drinks and beverages that contain alcohol. Drink more water than normal before, during, and after vigorous activities, at least 15 minutes before, and take fluid breaks at least every 15 minutes. Exercise indoors where possible. Drink more water than normal if one is exposed to heat for long periods greater than 2 hours. Avoid the sun during the middle of the day, such as by limiting, as much as possible, outdoor activities to mornings and evenings, and seeking out shade when outdoors. Wear lightweight, light-colored, loose-fitting clothes made of breathable fabrics. The public is also advised to avoid crowded locations and ensure that their homes are well ventilated. JBN, we keep you informed. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, leave us a comment, and click the notification bell to receive our daily news items.